Well, welcome to Martini Time on the last of the 4th, I guess. It's been like I've been writing about and talking about the Declaration of Independence all weekend. And so this is the last time I'll talk about the Declaration of Independence. And we just had a big rain here. I hope it didn't mess up your barbecues. So I wanted to talk about the topic I just wrote. Usually I write the topics to these talks. I have an iPad here, and so I pull up the live and it says describe topic, and that's when I put the topic in. And I wrote in the first freedom. Now we celebrate the Declaration of Independence as the birthday of freedom. That's what the Declaration of Independence was historically. The Declaration of Independence from Europe, from the history of Europe, from the monarchy, England. So it was much larger than just breaking free from the empire with the king, you see. There's a metaphorical meaning that was significance in the evolution of consciousness. This was the first time that consciousness broke free from the tether to conditioning and declared its freedom to create a new world, a new society, a new organization, a new social organism based on not obedience to the king, but obedience to one's inner nature. This was a revolution or an evolution in human consciousness, not just a historical event. So you have to look at consciousness as evolving, just like species evolve. So we don't, in the when you live in the material world and you think everything is just material, well then evolution is just the evolution of stuff, you see. But evolution is like there's matter, then there's matter evolves, just rocks and stuff, and that evolves to the biosphere, which would be plants. And then plants evolves to through the animal species till you get to man and the brain, and then the biosphere evolves into the noosphere or mind. I've just been reading Ken Wilber, so I'm using his language. So mind then evolves into spirit, which you could say would be awakening or enlightenment. So you have to look at evolution in the different spheres, you see, rather than just a flat evolution of stuff. Because the idea of the evolution of material does not include consciousness. It's just the evolution of bodies, species, animals, and man happens to be the last animal to evolve. And the buck stops there, I guess, you see, except then we imagine aliens having evolved, you see, and now, and all that crap. But what we're talking about here is the evolution of consciousness. So America, the Declaration of Independence, was a historical event that marked the evolution of human consciousness to the idea of liberation or freedom, you see. So that idea was born out of the Enlightenment. So those founding fathers were the children of the firstborn of the Enlightenment. It wasn't that old, you see. The Enlightenment, or the Age of Reason, was born out of the destruction of the Middle Ages and the dome of the Holy Roman Catholic Church, and the lock of everything was in that closed dome. And science was half magic and half empirical. It was called alchemy. So out of that you had the birth of this new way of viewing, new way of looking at reality and man, you see. And out of that, these founding fathers were the firstborn of this fresh new way of looking at reality. And you had giant Renaissance. This was the age of Renaissance men. Like in the Renaissance, you had Leonardo da Vinci, who was interested and knowledgeable in everything. The Renaissance man had an integrating mind. He was just interested in everything. And he saw everything as alive. And he was creative. He was like the MacGyver on steroids. Whatever he saw, he integrated it into a new idea. And Leonardo is the kind of like the personification of this Renaissance mind that awakened out of the death of the Middle Ages, you see. And so the Enlightenment, the age of reason, and the men of the Enlightenment of that age, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, all these, Hamilton, these were Renaissance men. These were integrating minds. These were creating minds. These were not minds that were determined by the past. These minds were creating reality. These minds were creating new ideas and worlds that had never existed before. And that's what the Constitution is. It's an idea that never existed before. So it was not, it used the past. This is what creativity is. Creativity is the first freedom. Creativity is both determined and free at the same time. Now how can that be, you see? Well, creativity has to use what's given. And what's given is determined by the past. So I live in Blackstone. So if I'm creating something right here now in this talk, it's conditioned by and determined by the fact that I'm in Blackstone, and I have to use what I study and learn in my experience, all that's given. My physical space, my family space, my inheritance, what I've learned, my experiences, all of that is given. And out of that, I create a new idea that has not existed before. So in a very minor way, in a very humble way, this talk, you see, is creating an idea that had not existed before. This talk has never existed before. I'm not repeating somebody else's talk. I'm not reading scriptures to you. You see, I'm not referencing the past. I'm creating it spontaneously. You know. So in a very small way, that's what we all do when we tap into our first freedom. The second freedom is the one that we celebrate. The second freedom is the freedom of the body to make choices. That's what we think freedom is. And that's fine, that's freedom. You need to be able to go and choose your religion. You need to be able to choose the person you want to relate to. You need to be able to choose whether to go to Target or Kohl's. You see? Now you need to you need to be able to choose whether you buy Kellogg's or Post Chipsies or whatever, you see? These are all, superficial, mundane things, but we think that's freedom. I want to have the freedom to choose, you see. But that's not the first freedom. You don't choose creativity. Try it. Can you choose to create something? No. The creative idea is given to you. Some call it grace. But the artist knows that the idea for the art is something that just comes in as if from outside. People have writer's block. Oh, I can't write. The more I try to write, the more it goes, you see. So you can't make yourself creative. Otherwise, everybody would be creative and rich. So there's a secret to it that has to be discovered. And that's the first freedom. So creativity is the first freedom. It's the first freedom before creativity is not determined by conditions. So if you're in a prison, if you're in a gulag, if you're in a torture camp, if you're in the Inquisition, if you're in hell, you can be creative because the creativity will use the hell, but it is not conditioned by the hell. It transcends the hell. So creativity transcends what is given. The Declaration of Independence transcends the conditions that was given, which was the colonies of an English monarchy. The creative idea has to use what is given, so it is determined, but at the same time, simultaneously, it is not conditioned by the past. It transcends the past and creates a new single idea that unifies the conditions out of which it grew. So the conditions that the Declaration of Independence unified was that you had a duality. You had the English monarchy and England. The greatest in Europe, the England was like the crown jewel of Europe. Of course, the French didn't agree, but you had to go on French and the English fighting, you see. Long history. But England was an established, powerful monarchy, and it was on the cusp of becoming the British Empire. And so then you had the colonies, right? Two realities, two worldviews begin to grow. Be one or the other. You couldn't be, if you were a colonist, you couldn't neglect the crown. If you were a loyalist, you couldn't neglect or deny the colony. So these are two realities in the same unity, or America. It was like yin and yang. How do we get out of this? You see, the tension between the two, which there has to be one America, has to be one, but it's two. This is like the left and the right, the Democrats and the Republicans. Same problem. Either or. You can't choose one without leaving the other because they're mutually dependent. Like Siamese twins. It's a good metaphor. You can't choose one without killing the other. I mean, you can't have one without the other because they are mutually wired together. So to get one being, you kill the other, but that kills this. You got nothing. So this is the situation, the conditions, the stress that created the single idea of a new America. So the birth of freedom is not what was born, but the creativity that gave it birth is the first freedom. And that first freedom gives birth to the mechanical freedom, like, well, I got to choose to go here or there, or I choose to have this idea or that idea, and all that freedom of things, freedom of people running around on top is not the first freedom. And yet we all seek the first freedom. Our whole economy runs on people who have discovered the first freedom. Steve Jobs. His creation of the Apple products were the creation of the first freedom. They never existed before. And they created a new reality, and we're living in it. We're talking on it right now. I'm using one of Steve Jobs' ideas, the iPad. Never existed before. Where did it come from? He created it out of the existing systems. But it wasn't dependent upon the systems in the sense that it was caused by the previous systems, you see. The iPad has no cause. The inception or the seed idea for the iPad had no cause. It's self-caused. It popped into Steve Jobs' head as an idea that he did not know what it was until he saw it. So everybody had to keep struggling. Bring me, oh, that isn't it. No, that isn't it. Get out of here. That isn't it. Get out of here. That's it. That's it. I didn't know it until I saw it. So he knew it, but he didn't know it. So that's the first freedom. You know it, but you don't know it. And you struggle and you sweat and you pour blood out until you give birth to it. It's like giving birth to a child. You see, I mean, it's a whole, sex and birth and babies and all that is a metaphor for the first freedom. opposites come together and create a new being. You don't know what it is until you see it. See? So the first freedom is a yearning, is an urge that must be born and have expression in a new form, you see. And we call that art. And once the artist creates a piece of work, it has its own life. He doesn't know what's going to happen to it. It can be thrown in the attic for 100 years. Or it can go get millions of bucks. He doesn't know where it's going. He lets it go. It's like a dove. You let it go, you see. It's a self-contained idea that vibrates with the unity of the opposites that was its parents. So the United States of America, the Constitution, America vibrates. The Constitution vibrates as a container of these opposites. The Constitution is a self-generating energy, like a battery. I use this on, go to this battery here. See, it generates energy. I can plug it in and turn on a flashlight. What is it? What is it, basically? It contains these opposites, positive and negative. It holds them simultaneously together. And it creates a feedback loop. Plug it in, turns on lights. Okay? The United States, the American Constitution is like that battery. You plug it in, it turns on freedom. Plug it in, it turns on light. But you screw with it, take it apart, take away some of the ingredients to it, it ain't going to work. It's like a watch. Take out some of the parts, you can figure out what it is, dissect it, add something, take away something else, but it won't tell time. So the Constitution that holds our first freedom in it like energy. The Constitution contains our first freedom, so it's available to be used when you plug it in to our current situation. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that a miracle? So we can create, we can tap into our first freedom and create freedom, which is what evolution is. Evolution is the continuous creation. It doesn't create once and stop. That's where creationists get screwed up. Well, God created it and that was it. In fact, that was the way the deists, who were the founding fathers, were deists. They weren't evangelicals, they were deists. And their concept of God was, well, God created the world like a clock and he wound it up and that was it, and he just took a nap. He stopped interfering in it. Now it was up to man to create the world through reason, you see. And intelligence that was in alignment with the intelligence of the cosmos. So the first freedom of the Constitution then is in alignment with the creative energy, the creative first freedom of the cosmos itself. The Constitution of the United States, in its balance, in its conception. See, the Declaration of Independence was the shout out, I'm free. And then that freedom created the Constitution, which contained the freedom for us. You see. So the Constitution is like that battery. You plug it in, turns on the lights, turns on the light of freedom. You see. But this is also an individual freedom. It's not just a freedom of the country. It's your freedom. So each of us, to make this nation full of light and freedom, has to plug into the first freedom, because it's the individual that is the seed of the American experience. It's not the king, it's not the president, it's not the Congress. This is all part of the clock. The Congress, the president, the court. That's the trinity of this constitutional clock. But what makes it go is the first freedom. The first freedom is alive, you see. So each of us has this first freedom. But we have to tap into it. You see, it can't just be given. It just can't be handed to you in a line, like a welfare check. You know, I don't want to get into that, but but you understand what I mean. The creative source of the America is in each individual, and each individual then has to activate that first freedom in themselves. And that does not mean, and that's where people get all screwed up, it doesn't mean getting a bunch of guns and sitting up there flying Confederate flags and saying, I'm free. No, it's creativity. Now that isn't creativity. That's just being determined by the past. The first freedom is creative freedom. That means you have to invent something, see something, do something that has never happened before. And that requires spontaneity. You can't determine or cause spontaneity. Try it. Try and be spontaneous. Right? Try and be spontaneous. Well, you can pretend. You can go blah, 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 blah. Play a fool. No, that isn't creativity. Creativity unifies and brings peace. Creativity brings joy. When the creative act happens, it's joyous. Artists know this. When you hit the creative idea, you're cracking champagne bottles. You see what I mean? It's the joy when opposites come together and create a new being. The baby's born, everybody's joyous. A new being is here. The art gallery has the artist's creations, all giving wine and cracking champagne. Look at all these babies up here I created. You see? So creativity is the first freedom. But it comes with the death of your belief and investment in conditions. The belief and investment in what you think you are, what you have been, and what you want to be. All of that has to go. Creativity has nothing to do with the past or the future. Creativity has nothing to do with the dreams. Creativity has nothing to do with plans, projects. The first freedom is free from time. It's free from the past and the future. You see, creativity is free from time. So in a way, the U.S. Constitution in America is free from time, which means that we have to keep recreating ourselves. And if we don't recreate ourselves, we just fall back into time and history and disappear. Conditioned, contained, and replication of the past. Nothing new. The whole burst, the whole miracle of America is that it creates itself. And we're in that problem right now. We're in the same fix that the colonists were in when they were caught between the rock and the hard place of loyalty to the king and loyalty to what they didn't even know who they were. They were colonists. But they were loyal to themselves because they were, of course, separated by all this space, you see. England, America, colonists, you see. Colonies were extensions of England. But the rubber band was stretched too far. So they were separate worlds were growing here. The old world and the new world. Something had to happen. A new world had to be created that included the conditions of the past. That's transcendence. Transcendence includes the conditions out of which the duality, the tension, the opposites out of which it grows. You see, it doesn't eliminate them; it includes them. That's what transcendent means. It's a free, creative whole that includes the opposites, the pain of which forced the creation. But this is an ongoing first freedom that has to be repeated by individuals throughout time. So this is not, the first freedom is not in time, it creates time. It creates history. the first freedom creates history. And so every time we have a Renaissance period in America, a period where a new idea comes into being, we create history, we create America anew. So we have periods in our history where America has recreated itself. FDR was one where he helped recreate America out of the despair of the Depression. World War II recreated America, you see. So we have periods where America is recreated. And we're in such a period now because the tension between the empire and the colonies, or the left and the right, the liberals and conservatives, is to the breaking point. Even Trump got elected by promising to unite America, but he's not doing it because he hasn't got a creative idea. You can't unite America unless you have a creative idea of a new America. You see? So his idea of a new America is to eliminate that which doesn't fit his idea of America. That's like cutting off the other Siamese twin so you'll have one child, but it kills both. You see? So it's the creative idea that unites the dissonance. It's the creative vision that unites the Civil War to a new peace, a new whole, you see. And so I guess Lincoln kind of personifies that creative idea that held the nation together through the Civil War. You see, and so we have these periods of renaissance and rebirth, but America keeps calling it again. When the opposites split, the opposites always just take new form, but it's the same formula. Monarchy, colonist, conservative, liberal, it's the same tension, the same call for a first freedom to break forth and recreate America, you see. So that's where we are. So happy 4th of July.